right, I've been sitting here for, I don't know, like 30 minutes or so, really trying to convince myself that I should make this video. All right, so just bear with me and let's jump into it. KotlinConf 2025 just happened, and I am freaking excited because a lot of the updates affect mobile engineers. All right, so off the top, I just want to briefly touch on this little graph that we're seeing here. I started as a Kotlin engineer in 2017. So it's amazing from my perspective to see that 7 years later, we're more than double the amount of users that are adopting Kotlin. I honestly think that Kotlin is one of the best developer-friendly programming languages out there, and I have a lot of fun writing code with it. That and Swift. Yeah, I like Swift too. What excites me the most out of all of these announcements is the new Swift export. When you build your Kotlin Multiplatform project, it exports into an Objective-C library that is then imported into your Xcode project, and you can build natively that way. Now, a lot of the iOS community are not happy about this dependency on Objective-C. They would much rather using Swift, rightfully so. I remember back in 2020, when I worked for a company called Procore, I presented an example project of how we could integrate Kotlin Multiplatform so we could share business logic between iOS and Android. That was shut down because Kotlin Multiplatform exported it over to Objective-C. So with this announcement, it's super exciting because we're much closer to what native iOS apps look like today. A lot of their tech stack include using Swift. So this feature, although experimental, is very, very exciting because in a short-term future, we're going to get to the point where we can just write our code in Kotlin and give it over to the Swift guys. It breeds in more, what's it called, collaboration between iOS and Android engineers. We can focus more on the platform-specific things and then just deal with the business logic without compromising what the iOS devs are expecting. Now, this is experimental. It's probably a far away feature, but it should be a good sign of what's to come. The next feature that was announced that I'm really happy about, like super stoked, is the Kotlin Multiplatform Wizard. So if I wanted to create a application that works for both Android, iOS, and I wanted to share some of the server logic, or maybe add a desktop application with it, I would have to come all into this multi-platform wizard, download the base project, and then open it on my local device. Now, this might not seem like a big thing, but instead of having to go through that web browser, I can just install the Kotlin Multiplatform plugin into my IDE, start a new project, set it up, and we can just go ahead and choose all of these platforms that we want to target. The fact that it's now embedded into this plugin that our IDE can use, it just takes out an unnecessary step, a much easier way to get started and not have to think too much about what all I need to do to set up Kotlin Multiplatform. Also, this plugin adds Preflight checks. It lets you know what all do you need for your environment to be set up appropriately so you can build your Kotlin Multiplatform project. Also, it provides you all of these targets that you don't have to manually configure. In order to access this plugin, you need to be on the latest Android Studio, which you can go to the Studio Preview releases and download Narwhal. Or if you want to use IntelliJ, I believe the latest version will be able to support this plugin. Now, for my third thing that I am super excited about, we are now officially stable with Compose Multiplatform. That is huge. Performance-wise, the comparison between Swift UI and Compose Multiplatform, over 96% of themes that are using Compose Multiplatform have not reported any performance degradation. So once again, kudos to the JetBrains team doubling down on this tool to allow us to build cross-shared UIs. Also, a big part of this update is hot reload. For those of you who've seen me on stream, know that I don't use previews in my project. Previews to me are janky. Like I can just simply build the app in under 10 seconds and it'll immediately deploy and I get to see my changes there. So I had no incentive to use the previews. That it really didn't work for me. But this Compose Hot Reload is a game changer. Why? Well, now I don't have to rebuild my app. This is big. This is like a huge efficiency booster. I don't have to constantly build and go through this whole loop while trying to verify if my UI changes look the way I'm expecting it to look. Great addition. Another cool thing that was announced at KotlinConf 2025 is Amper, a new build tool that's being developed by JetBrains. For those of you who are Android engineers, you know we hate Gradle. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna speak for all of y'all, but I hate Gradle. I've had much better success with Bazel. So throwing in a third build tool in the mix with Amper is good to keep Gradle and Bazel on their toes. Kotlin is very friendly to its developers. Amper is being built with that same mentality. It's going to allow us to build configurations for Android applications, web applications, even your Spring Boot applications. I'm pretty excited about that. Now, this next announcement caught me a little bit off guard because I wasn't expecting JetBrains to throw out anything in regards to AI, although, you know, I should have expected that, to be fair. But this tool in particular is called Koog, a open source agent framework, so you can build AI agents using Kotlin. I don't know if I'm excited, but I'm curious about this. I am not going to go too in details into these, but you can see here that there are a bunch of different key features. For instance, is pure Kotlin implementations, the modular feature system. Yeah, Koog seems like a pretty interesting thing, and maybe I'll develop a side project with it just to experiment on how to build AI agents. All right, so I'm just gonna hit you with a few extra things that were announced in KotlinConf 2025 that I think are actually pretty cool. So one of the first things was JetBrains and Spring are teaming up to push Kotlin as the backend language of choice. Back in 2019, I had a client that wanted us to build the backend API using Spring Boot. They also wanted us to use Kotlin. At the time, it was easy to set up. I didn't have a lot of problems with it. However, there were certain instances where I would hit edge cases that there wasn't any resources online or big community around Kotlin and Spring Boot. So the fact that now JetBrains and Spring are partnering to bring support over to the backend, this is pretty dope. For those of you who use Visual Studio Code, I'm stoked for y'all. JetBrains just announced that they're bringing language server for Kotlin. You're now going to be able to use your own IDE alongside with Kotlin. We can now set it up via these Kotlin extensions, and you can plug it into Visual Studio Code. No longer need to use IntelliJ IDEs. This plugin extension is now going to open Kotlin into many more people's hands. So yeah, KotlinConf 2025 brought some fire. For me, Swift exports a better Kotlin Multiplatform onboarding through its wizard, and Compose Multiplatform UI hidden stable. Those are the highlights as a mobile dev. Of course, we have the Spring partnership, Visual Studio Code support, a brand new framework for writing AI agents, a brand new build system with Amper. Look, there's just so many dope features that were announced. If you're building mobile apps with Kotlin, now is definitely the time to lean in. This is great news for indie devs that want to share code between iOS, Android, or even other platforms like desktop and web. Let me know what you're most excited about. And yo, I'm trying to be consistent. So if you have any feedback, let me know. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you soon.